Well, I think to answer that, I have to go back to, why I moved back to Sarasota. As you know, I grew up here. I went to Sarasota High School, where I had a great experience growing up here. This community afforded me a lot of opportunities that I don't feel could have happened anywhere else. And, I was fortunate enough to get an education, and as I was coming back to Sarasota, I really wasn't comfortable with the direction that Sarasota was going, with some of the issues that Sarasota was facing. Right around that time was the pain pill epidemic, if you recall, and a lot of my classmates from high school, they were losing their future, they were losing their lives, and it really instilled in me a sense of responsibility to come back and try to make this the same great place that it was for me when I was growing up. So after law school, I decided to come back and get started. I got a job at the state attorney's office, where I started to deal with some of those issues, a lot of the issues that the city faces on the ground level. I prosecuted everything from municipal ordinance violations within the city through misdemeanors, juvenile issues, and also up through serious felonies like drug trafficking was a passion of mine, and also other issues that a lot of people don't kind of know that we have to deal with, like human trafficking, of violent crime. So I've been trying to give back and make a difference since moving back. This, for me, is just another way for me to be able to make a difference in this community, a little bit of a different platform, but nonetheless, make a difference. Well, let's talk about two issues that I think everybody is very concerned about, and then what makes me different. Okay, the homeless issue is a major issue that Sarasota has been facing for a long time. Something I dealt with a lot as a prosecutor in the county court system. I've dealt with the mental health issues, and I understand the substance abuse issues very well. And what sets me apart in dealing with that issue, it is really my experience and my relationships. I have great relationships with law enforcement, both agencies, the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. I have great relationships with the nonprofits in this community that I think we need to work with to make an impact in this area and move people out of homelessness. And great relationships with the county courts, who have basically become our social services safety net, with mental health court, DUI court, veterans court. What I found was that we have a lot. This is what makes us unique and able to deal with this issue. We have a lot of great nonprofits that deal with these issues that the homeless face, whether it's mental health or substance abuse. We're a very philanthropic community. The problem is there's not much or enough cooperation between the nonprofits that exist in this community and the government agencies. So what I would like to do is use the relationships that I have and the experience that I have to bring both the nonprofits together to not only work amongst themselves to create some continuums of care depending on the issue, but also get them working more closely with law enforcement and the county courts to really utilize what we have in the community, because it's special and it's unique and it's what really sets us apart and will enable us to deal with this issue. And I just want to say, this is a humanitarian issue first and foremost. 80% of homeless folks in this community are truly your down and out. Their mothers, their fathers, they're people that come across tough times, lose their jobs, find themselves in a tough spot. They receive help and services and they move themselves out of homelessness. What most people that are concerned about the issue in the community focus on is the 20% of chronic homeless folks that have severe mental health issues, have severe substance abuse issues. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Some of these folks just want to be homeless. That's the life they've chosen, and that's fine. The Constitution cuts both ways, but you can't do it at the expense of other people. So you can't do it at the expense of families that want to use our public parks. You can't do it at the expense of store owners and mom and pop shops on Main Street that are trying to make it. And so it's an issue that I think affects a lot of facets in our community, and it's an issue that that 20%, that chronic homeless group, is something that has eluded, I think, the current commission. I don't think they have the experience or the relationships or the ability to deal with it in a reasonable way. What my opponents are proposing, some of them, and what the city commission is proposing, is a housing first model. And make no mistake, the city cannot afford that. Okay, it's a model that has been implemented in other areas that are very different than Sarasota, both physically, geographically, and it's cost prohibitive. We run $1 million deficit in our budget currently, and the idea that we're going to be paying, essentially what it is providing apartments for homeless folks without addressing the underlying mental health or substance abuse issues. Not only will it not work, but it's just simply cost prohibitive, and to me it's not a serious solution. Well, look, there's no problem. We have no shortage of beds here. If you look at nonprofits like the Harvest House, they have over 300 beds in this community, in this city. The Salvation Army, which is a triage center, has hundreds of beds as well. The beds are not the problem. The problem is addressing the issues in a meaningful way, the underlying issues. And the housing first model, or the housing first proposal, is more of an unattainable magic elixir, in my opinion. It's something that the commission can propose and just say, if we could implement this, all our problems would be gone. But it's cost prohibitive. And not only that, but I have conservative estimates put the cost of that program at $10,000 per person per year. I have a serious problem and really moral issue paying people's rents without addressing the underlying causes, when we have a lot of struggling single mothers, a lot of young people that are living paycheck to paycheck that are not getting that type of assistance. So I just have a lot of problems with that program, with that model. I don't think it's effective, and I think that going back to your original question, what sets me apart is my experience, my relationships with the groups that I think we need to bring together to actually make a meaningful difference in that area by utilizing what we already have and not spending or wasting taxpayer dollars. And the other thing I will say, I think is that one of the big issues that separates me from the rest is the haphazard and disjointed development that we've seen throughout the city. And you asked, what separates me from them? My question to you would be, why would you leave the reins in the hands of the people that have been intimately involved in not only the planning, but the direction of our city for years? Many of my opponents have been involved in this, whether it's officially, peripherally. They had a voice that they could have used during this last 10, 15 years when we had no direction. We had no vision, we had nobody at the helm, and people are frustrated. I've talked to a lot of people at their doorsteps, and they're frustrated. They don't believe that we have a direction, that Sarasota is growing in a way that's haphazard, that it's disjointed, that the infrastructure cannot support. And I think it's time that we have someone who can have that discussion with the people, with the community, and get us back on track in a direction that we're comfortable with. That's all we want. Well, there's first of all one kind of, I think, fallacy we have to address. And I think what you're getting at with the side effects of growth is one of the problems that a lot of folks have in this community, and that's with our traffic. Okay, that's a problem that people feel day in and day out, and I understand that. But some folks that I'm running against have done a good job at blaming the traffic issues on some of the downtown development and growth that, quite frankly, has not even had an impact in it yet. These buildings are not even online, and they're already trying to tie traffic to downtown growth. Okay, I think that's unfair. Traffic in Sarasota, the primary cause of it is that we're becoming a commuter city. People live here, or people work here that cannot afford to live here. And that's a problem. If we have a workforce that has to commute to work every single day, from whether it's Northport, Ellington, the outside of the county, because they cannot afford to live in the city near where they work, we are always going to have a traffic problem. We need to address that. So going back to your question about how we maintain kind of our character, you know, we have to encourage. The great thing about Sarasota is we have such unique, character-rich neighborhoods, and each one has their own personality, and you know, it's really what makes us special. We need a city commission that encourages the neighborhoods to maintain their character, maintain their personality. You know, great neighborhoods are neighborhoods that are relatively self-contained. They have a close-by market, they have a coffee shop, you know, they have a sense of community within themselves, and then they're within the greater city. So we have to encourage that. I think that's important. But also we have to preserve and protect Main Street, which is, you know, I think a gem. I think it's a unique attribute of our city that other communities frankly copy. I mean, you look at Lakewood Ranch, they built a Main Street overnight to mimic ours. We have the real thing. And you know, it is a place where families should be able to go, that there should be different kinds of commerce and business, entertainment and restaurants. We have to maintain a family-friendly, vibrant Main Street. And I think that will help a lot in preserving our identity moving forward. But you know, we also do have to address haphazard growth, and we have to get it moving in a direction that we're comfortable with. You know, 15 years ago, we changed the direction of Sarasota. The community got together and decided on a course of growth or development to kind of get downtown moving or get downtown going. I think we made a mistake in that at that time. And I think the mistake was that we envisioned a downtown that was much too large for our city to sustain. I would like to rectify that. And what I mean, so when we impose these restrictions and these requirements in the code, what happened is we decided our downtown was going to be a massive area, basically from 10th Street all the way down to Ringling, Shade, and it's just not. You know, the traditional boundaries of our downtown have always been US 41 to 301 on the east and west, and Fruitville and Ringling on the north and south. Okay, that's our downtown. Main Street should really remain the center of it, and I have no problem. I want to have a vibrant downtown within those boundaries, and I think most people do. But when we start imposing the requirements and restrictions of that downtown core in the areas that surround that, we end up with situations like the View, which are mandated to be built right on the sidewalk as if it's right on Main Street. And quite frankly, we're just not that big of a city to need that large of a downtown. So I think we have to readdress that. I think we have to readdress the geographic boundaries of our downtown and the specifics of what the codes require and prohibit. And also, you know, the devil is in the details with a form-based code. There's a balance. You want to give enough guidance to the development of an area, but you still want architects and investors to be able to create something special and something unique. It's what makes our city eclectic. And I guess the third point I would make is that we have to be careful that we're not homogenizing our neighborhoods, and that what we're doing with the code is not changing the character and the personality of the many neighborhoods. We have to maintain that. I think we already have that in a lot of neighborhoods. I don't think we need to change too much. People are concerned when they start when people start talking about bulldozing single-family homes and putting commercial space in all of a sudden. But I think it's more about fostering the commercial space we already have that already kind of outlines some of these neighborhoods. I mean, you look at the South Side kind of Midtown area. That area is a great walkable, beautiful area. There's, they have a Morton's Market, they have a market they can go to, they have breakfast shops, they have coffee shops. And that area really services a lot of different neighborhoods around there. We don't need to impose on these neighborhoods. We just need to foster these types of areas that already exist in the community. All right. So going back to kind of just to, reiterate my point, anybody that goes east or west on Fruitville or University at rush hour knows that these folks, the traffic that we're experiencing is coming from outside of our city limits. It's not people just circulating downtown. So allowing people that want to live closer to where they work, letting them, enabling them to afford places closer to where they work. And not only that, but providing jobs that pay a reasonable or living wage so that people can afford. This is a two-sided thing. We have to have attainable housing, but we also have to have good jobs that get you to that point. Those are very, very important issues regarding traffic. There are things that we can do. I do want to improve pedestrian and bicycle mobility throughout the city, and especially in the surrounding neighborhoods around downtown. I think we have a very poorly designed downtown as in terms of walkability. I think that we have an extremely poorly designed downtown and surrounding neighborhoods when it comes to bicycling. I live relatively close to downtown between Shade and Tuttle. It's probably 3/4 of a mile down to the Bayfront, and it is a very, very uncomfortable bike ride for me to simply go out of my neighborhood down Ringling Boulevard. I wouldn't want a family of four to do that same thing. So hopefully, and I will do everything I can to encourage the Legacy Trail extension, and I think a lot of the cycling network that we can build comes from there. We start with that, and then we try to improve the cycling network with bike paths and better sidewalks, better walkability for the surrounding areas. But it's all related. The homeless issue is related to that as well. We have to deal with that because if people are uncomfortable walking from their neighborhoods to downtown, then it doesn't matter what kind of sidewalks or bike paths we have. There are neighborhoods that are relatively affordable. I do think we have to look at it from both sides. I think that we have to, especially as a commissioner, for me, a commissioner has two roles. One is their usual duties as a commissioner, but also, a commissioner should really be an ambassador for the city. They should be someone that can reach out to businesses, to fledgling companies, to startups, and say, hey, look at this great city. Look at Sarasota. Wouldn't you love to move here and start your company here? I don't think it's enough to just vote no without thinking about what would be better. What could we do better? If I'm going to vote down something, it should be incumbent on me to at least aid the process of finding something that would be compatible, something that would work for Sarasota. And I think that that's a very important part of this. I think that having wages and jobs that pay enough for people to afford attainable housing is a critical part of this. I mean, without doing that, I don't think we can get to the point where we have widespread attainable housing for folks. We have to address, the economy and the local job market. But there are certain things that the commission can do if we're able to do that. And, I think that we're heading in the right direction with a lot of different projects. Building very, very, very expensive condos are never going to be affordable for working class folks. And if we ever want to encourage that, we have to start building, living space that people can attain. We have a lot of great neighborhoods. I just moved into one that is kind of a neighborhood in transition. I think I, got it for a reasonable price, but I'm not in the same situation as a lot of other folks. I think that, addressing wages is a very important part of this. Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I think the public has to be aware of that, unfortunately, this group is not explaining adequately. If we go from an administrative review process to a public review process, okay, let's talk about an administrative review process and what that entails. Somebody has a site plan. They own a piece of property. They have rights to that property. They have a site plan. They submit it to the city to build on it. The city or the staff reviews it to see if it fits the zoning code, if it makes sure it fits the requirements and the prohibitions or the what's required of the zoning code. If it does, then the city approves it. If we change to it in a public review process, that does not change. All it is a site plan is submitted. There are public hearings, but the public hearing's purpose is to decide or to figure out if the site plan fits the requirements or the prohibitions of the code. You do not get to redesign your neighbor's house, which is being promulgated. Okay, that is a fallacy. You don't get to chime in and say, I think it should have more windows, or I think the color should be different. That is something that needs to be explained to people. The other thing is that when the downtown core went to the administrative review process, that was an issue, and it was an agreement. But the legal landscape has changed since that happened. Okay, the Burt-Harris Act, which was passed in 1995, at the state level, protects private property rights, and it protects them from overly burdensome review process or procedural processes such as this. My fear is twofold. One is that if we go to a public review process, people will have the false belief of what that can achieve. And two, as soon as that's implemented and there's an issue, there'll be a lawsuit filed, and the city will pay dearly for it, and will be in another, just litigation situation where the city's paying, and three, the outcome does not change. Okay, unless you address the zoning code and how our city is supposed to be developed under the code, you don't address the outcome. It may slow it a lot, it may cost the city a lot of money in litigation, but it doesn't change the outcome. That's why if we want to change the outcome for the future of our city, we have to address it in the zoning code. The procedural change that's being proposed does not address the substantive problem with our city. Essentially what it will do is it turns the process over from the architects that are dealing with it now to the attorneys. I've spoken with a lot of experts in this area, and I think it's partly on you all to speak to these people. These people are experts in land use. They'll tell you that it will be a quagmire, it'll be a legal nightmare, and it'll be very, very costly for the city, and it will not achieve the results that people want to see happen. Okay, this to me seems very obvious and simple. People expect their municipal government to spend their tax dollars on three things: to make sure that utilities are affordable and efficient, to make sure that their infrastructure is sustainable, and to make sure that their public safety is top-notch. Those are the three pillars of municipal government. And people are frustrated right now because our commissioners spend a lot of money on peripheral issues and pet projects that do not address these principal issues. So as a commissioner, that's what I would do. And I would tell the taxpayers, look, when you pay your tax dollars to the city, they will be going towards those three pillars. They will be going towards utilities, infrastructure, and public safety. That's what they want their money spent on. Time is a different commodity that commissioners have, and it's my time that I want to give to the homeless issue and to development. Well, first of all, it's not having conversations about spending more money. Like this housing first issue. We already run $1 million deficit. Last budget was $1 million in the hole. Okay, where some of these folks think we're getting the money to pay for some of these, some of these so-called solutions is beyond me. And we do have financial issues in the city, and we do need to address them. But here's the optimistic part. We are in a very unique position to address these issues in our city's history, in our city's lifespan. We have property values rising, so revenue is already going up without raising taxes. We have thousands of already approved units, condos, apartments going online, which are going to contribute to the tax base as well. My plea is that we not squander it. This is such a unique opportunity for us to address some of these financial issues that we have. If we get back to basics and we start focusing on those three pillars, and we use the revenue that we're going to see in the coming years intelligently, then we'll be in a much, much better sustainable financial shape, but we cannot squander it. People are furious about how our tax dollars are spent. Okay, they're furious that I think at the core of it, and it's very sad because at the core of people's concerns is that they do not feel that the municipal government, the city government, can achieve results in the major problems that the city is facing. There is a trust issue. That's why a lot of the questions that we get asked are about moving the election, about changing the form of government, because, and that's a very sad state to be in when you're not even talking about issues anymore. You're talking about how do we change the whole structure of government so that we can even begin to talk about these issues. So I think people are furious that their tax dollars are wasted on peripheral issues and pet projects. I think that people want to see us refocus our tax dollars back on those three pillars, in ways that affect people, and also just make sure that tax dollars are being spread evenly throughout the city and not in just a commissioner's neighborhood. Okay, this is nothing more than it's a tax increase, and the people proposing it feel that it'll be more palatable if they devote it to a certain area. And I have to go back again. People do not want a tax increase when they see the waste that's occurring with their tax dollars. We have to get that under control first before we could ever go to the public and say we want more money. I think we have adequate revenue stream, as I talked about. I think that it's only going to get better, and I'm saying, we cannot squander it. I am all for parks, and recreational spending, but I think that kind of falls under our city's infrastructure, and I think that our community wants us to spend our tax dollars on it. I don't think they need or want us to raise taxes when we're spending money on peripheral issues and pet projects. Well, I mean, I can go into what we've seen in the past and the spending, on lawsuits and, lift station fiascos. But I'd rather talk about where we need, what we need to address. Because I do think that if we do look at what we can save and how we can be more efficient, there will be money there. We have in my opinion, a depleted police department. I think we're at 165 sworn officers currently. Just 10 years ago, we were at 205. The things that the community cares about, people speeding through their neighborhoods, enforcing the laws that are on the books, these things can't be achieved without an adequate police department. And I think that's an area that we need to address, and I think that's an area that we need to shift some money towards. How do you explain going from 205 officers down to 165 when our population has gone the exact opposite direction? So, when it comes to public safety and law enforcement, it's the community's need. And I've worked in this area as a prosecutor. I've seen the difference that an extra officer can make, both in the morale in the police department and on the street in the neighborhood. So I think it really is a public need standard when it comes to public safety. I am against paid parking in the downtown area for a lot of reasons, but primarily is, downtown does not need another barrier to people coming downtown to spend money. We have a homeless issue downtown that needs to be addressed. We have construction that's creating kind of a mess downtown. These mom and pops are trying to survive. They're struggling. They are contemplating leaving. They're contemplating going to Lakewood Ranch, UTC, some of the surrounding cities that we're competing with. I just don't feel it's the appropriate time to bring another barrier to people coming downtown. Well, I don't think it's from parking meters. I don't think parking meters add that kind of revenue. But that's an expense that the city has to absorb, obviously. But like I said, it goes to the infrastructure of the city. I mean, that's what our tax dollars should be going towards: the roads, maintaining the downtown area, maintaining the parking infrastructure. I mean, that's what I think people want to see their money spent on. I think they should take a leadership role. I think they should be, help in any way they can. I think it's a great project from what I've seen. The proposal includes an art district. It includes wide open spaces and public parks. I think that's great, and we should encourage it. The city a lot of times is better at being obstructionists than they are enablers. And I think that not only in this project, but other projects, the city needs to start being more of an enabler and aid in the process and promote some of these assets that we want to bring to the city instead of throwing sticks in the spokes. Yeah, the market decides what events the city wants. If the event doesn't do very well, it won't come back. But you asked about how do we sustain a community, how do we sustain an identity. This is one of the ways. You have events downtown, you have events on Main Street where families can walk into town, they can come to the center of town, interact with their fellow citizens. These things are, I think, essential to maintaining a community identity. And I think people want them. I think people miss these events, and I think we should have other great events downtown. Well, because it was a bunch of nonsense. I mean, it was nothing. You as a news person have to ask yourself, was it important because it was in the paper, or was it in the paper because it was important? And this, generated news. It was sensationalized, but at the end of the day, it was something very, very minor. It was an administrative oversight, and I'm happy to tell you what kind of happened. So as an attorney, a practicing attorney, we have to do continuing legal education credits. You get these through lunches and seminars. I'm very active in the Bar Association, and so as a result, I happen to have a lot of them, probably more than anybody else, my age. The Florida Bar didn't have my address correct in its database, so it was sending notices to the wrong address and I wasn't getting them, that they were coming due. They obviously went unheeded. At the time, I was not paying attention to it because I was in the middle of a major heroin trafficking trial, and I had just filed and was investigating the first human trafficking case that was ever taken through conviction in this community. The Florida Bar put an administrative flag or a suspension on my license. I found out about it through a friend. I called the Florida Bar. It was resolved within 20 minutes. All I had to do was call them, and they told me to go online and input my credits. I did that. It was over. It was nothing. It was never a Florida Bar issue. It was never a legal issue. It never affected any of my cases. It never affected any of my convictions, and it never cost the taxpayers 1 cent. And as a matter of fact, 2 months later, my peers nominated me and confirmed me to the Sarasota County Bar of Board of Directors. So that's how much it mattered to them. It was sensationalized, and I think it's important to know that nothing ever came of it. It was never an issue. It's something that does happen time to time, and it's just such a minor administrative oversight that it really has no effect on my ability to be a great commissioner. These are procedural, how to operate in the city are procedural issues. Where do I file this? How do I file that? It can be learned very, very quickly. Why would you want someone who has spent years on the planning board during a time of haphazard and disjointed growth? Why would you want someone who sat on the commission during this time where we haven't seen any improvement in the chronic homeless issue, that should have been a vocal, a voice for the direction of our city? Why would you want them? I think it's a benefit, truly, to have worked in the state attorney's office and seen the problems that we have in the city on the ground level, built relationships that will aid in my ability to actually get some of these things done, and work with our other elected officials, county government, to make a difference for the people of this community. So my question is, my answer is, why, would I think that I could do? Why would you leave the reins in the hands of the people that have left you unhappy with the course or direction of our community, of the community I grew up in? Well, because I've had the I think, benefit of seeing the community from an outside perspective go into a direction that we're not happy with. One of my opponents voted for the very zoning plan that we're all unhappy with. So, to me, I think that, and I know this, that the community, that the people are looking for a different direction. They're looking for a fresh voice. They're looking for fresh leadership. They're looking for leadership, period. And they're not happy with a lot of things that the city has done and a lot of things that the city has not been able to do. They're not happy that their tax dollars are being spent in ways that are frivolous or peripheral or pet project oriented. And, they want a difference. I've been effective in every organization, every project I've ever been in. I give back to the community in different avenues, nonprofits, and I'll be effective in this role. I think it's just important for people to remember that I'm doing this for the right reasons. You know, I'm doing this because, you know, I could have been a lawyer anywhere in the country. Could have been a lawyer anywhere in Florida. I chose to come back to my town, face some obvious, you know, some issues, but deal with some issues to make a difference. And that's all I've been doing since I got back. You know, I volunteer at Booker High School with their mock trial program, volunteer with Teen Court, give those kids, you know, a second chance. We have a great community. We have so many assets, and I just don't want to see it squandered. I want to see us move in a different direction, and I think I am able and capable of taking us that way.
Got it. Great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come in and chat with us. I think we can